Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back to the On podcast. We have with us brother Sami Hamdi, the single most requested podcast guest that we've ever had, both in Urdu or English. I'm not even kidding. For I think well over 2 years. I'm pretty confident in English, but as far as Urdu is concerned, you're in the running for top three at least. And a lot of Pakistanis who have access to the English language will. I think primarily you're one of those figures online who is informing their opinions about the situation in Gaza, in Yemen, in Somalia. I would describe them as larger ummatic affairs. People generally tend to turn towards you, if not outside sources. And with outside sources, obviously they come with the baggage of, oh, this is the axis of resistance. These are the lefty guys. These are the war hawks. These are the conservatives. These are America first guys. These are these guys, and those people have all that baggage. But with brother Sami, I think people know what they're getting, and people are huge fans. So, brother Sami Hamdi, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
First of all, obviously, I think it's everyone from the Pakistani side would like to congratulate you on your very patient time in American ICE detention, and alhamdulillah, now that you're out. You at no point gave up on your political beliefs and the consistency of those principles. Your act of being arrested was a protest. Your detention while you were there was a protest. And when you came out, it was also a form of protest. And not for a minute did you forget your brothers and sisters already in or still are in ICE detention. Can you walk us through that whole process of how you were detained? And not because I think you've done a great job telling people the whole actual literal process, but can you tell us something about the thinking that you had throughout that process in terms of the politics of it, like how you thought you could position yourself in it and what you could get out of it? Because obviously it's just one man, but you'd become much bigger than that. I think you're more of a symbol now.
Jazakallah khair for having me. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think that more broadly, there was a sense that it was coming. I think that the crackdown that had begun under the Biden administration and that Trump sort of took and also went along with it as well. I think there was a sense that those who are becoming particularly loud with regards to Palestine and Gaza more broadly, there was this sense of a crackdown coming from the Israeli lobby, and they were becoming very bold and very much more open about it as well. Primarily, not because the Israeli lobby was strong, but because they were losing, because they are losing momentum, because they're losing influence, because now the American population is shifting tremendously. We're seeing the polls now show that Israel is at a historical low in terms of the support that it gets from the American public. We're seeing now that Israel is becoming a political liability. Mamdani winning in New York and Marjorie Taylor Greene rebelling against MAGA as a result of their support for the Israelis, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, etc. The way that the Israelis spent $50 billion to buy TikTok, Netanyahu is on video where he says the most important purchase that we need to make is of TikTok. The reason that he's saying that is because there is an awareness, and I saw this even when I was in America, even in red states that you would expect would support the Israelis wholeheartedly, there was this shift. There were many Americans now saying, I used to support Israel, but I never knew this is what they were doing. I used to support Israel, but I didn't know that they killed children. I used to support Israel, but I'm horrified by the amount of money that we give them in that regard. And therefore, I was not the first. To be honest, I think that I was the easy target, because if you remember, first they threatened Mehdi Hassan with removing his naturalized citizenship. And then when that failed, or they couldn't get any traction with that, they went after green card holders like Mahmoud Khalil, and then they failed with that. So they decided to go after student visas, Rumaysa Ozturk and Muhsin Mahdawi, and they failed with that. So it sort of felt like, oh my God, we're trying all these things, and it seems the courts are in our way, and they were losing the American public, and AIPAC is becoming a liability. You'll note that some candidates for Congress are coming out and saying, we're not taking any donations from AIPAC. Please, we promise you, when we have nothing to do with them. The idea being that they needed something to create a sense of fear amongst the Americans that you need to stop talking about Palestine. You have to stop talking about the Americans. And this is why my thinking was, this isn't an attack on me personally. This is actually an attack on the American people. It's simply this idea of how do we create a sense of fear whereby people stop talking about Gaza, people stop talking about Palestine, people stop talking about Islam, people stop talking, because Tucker Carlson, for example, this Islam part, so people don't think I'm exaggerating. Many people will have seen the clip, but if they haven't, they can just search it. Tucker Carlson actually has a podcast where he says, hey, when 9/11 happened, they told us Islam was the evil, so we ran with it. and we told everybody Islam is evil. But recently I've been looking into it, and did you know that Islam means surrender? I mean, as a Christian, I like that. I like that idea of Islam meaning, surrender to God and stuff. Candace Owens reading verses from Surah Maryam. There is this sense that how do I stop it? So they came out. So my thinking was that it's not against me, it's that we're winning. And this is simply a price that, some people have to pay along the way as they continue going. And the funny thing is, on the Tuesday before I was arrested, I was in the car in California with a very good friend of mine, older brother, who asked me, Sami, how are you feeling? And I remember saying to him, because he reminded me that I had said it to him. I told him, Wallahi, Habibna, I feel like there are clouds circling over me. And I feel like something is coming, but I don't know what. In this regard. And I even did a podcast with Usama Shurafa, I think about a week before I was arrested, or 10 days before I was arrested. And I didn't know this. He sent me the clip, or somebody sent me the clip. About 1 hour, 50 minutes into the podcast, he asks me, Sami, what's next for you? And I told him, Wallahi, I don't know. It could be prison. It could be, as only Allah knows what comes next. So people comment, it's as if he knew, but Wallahi, I didn't know. The point that I'm saying is that my thinking during the process was, okay, at the end of the day, you look at the test that the people of Gaza go through. You look at the test that Palestinians go through. You look at the test that, my grandfather was an Algerian mujahid who fought in the war against the French. I know all of those stories. My experience doesn't compare to any one of those whatsoever. And at the end of the day, I was imprisoned in California. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm saying by comparison, in the grand scheme of things, my thinking was, look, even if they take me out, there's still millions of people talking about it. The only thing I was concerned about was, and this is why I started with saying it wasn't a strong Israeli lobby that went after me, it was a weakened Israeli lobby, is that I always argue that people should see situations for what they are, not what they think they are. There's a reason why they're doing all of this. It's because of that shift in momentum. But the point I'm making here is, because I'm not repeating the point I said earlier, what I mean to say is, who's causing that shift? What's the reason that the Israeli lobby is losing influence in America? It's not because there's multi-billion-dollar, campaigns being conducted on the part of state. It's not. There is no. If you compare the amount of money that Israel has spent to try to maintain its influence versus the money spent on the Palestinian cause, there's no comparison. Israel spent way more. So the power is not to do with the material power, whether it's money or the like. It's to do with ordinary people, even those sitting in Pakistan and Islamabad and these other places, Karachi and Lahore, who are on their phones, whether on social media or the like, who are simply retweeting as they're, riding around on the streets. So all of that does make a difference. That's what's making people receive the message. And that's why I think that the only thing that I was concerned about was, now that they've come after me, and I think that the other countries are denying visas to other people talking about Palestine, etc., that if they win on this fear aspect, if they convince people that this price is not worth paying, that there's no hope, don't tweet, don't post, don't talk about it, then they win in that regard. And that's why, and I'll finish on this point. Somebody said to me the other day, I might get in trouble for saying this, but anyway, he said to me, Sami, what is the hardest part about all of this stuff? And not just about me specifically, about everybody who's talking about these issues. I said to him, he said to me, is it the Israeli lobby? Is it this government? Is it that government? Is it these other governments that you criticize or the like? I said, Wallahi, it's none of those. The hardest part about all of this is to convince the Muslim that da'wah works. The hardest part is to convince the Muslim that his or her voice has value, to convince the Muslim or Muslimah that whatever their circumstances, Allah has put power in their voice. Allah put power in the ability to speak. That when Allah said, فَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى, those who do even an atom, Allah says, an atom of good deed, that you see it. The hardest part I found is not to convince the Israelis that Palestinians are strong. They're spending billions to silence this power. So they acknowledge it's very powerful. They know it's a multi-billion-dollar force. They know they need to spend that much money just to stop you, just to stop that force. The hardest part is convincing the Muslim to see themselves the way Netanyahu sees them. Netanyahu sees them powerful. The Muslim is the one who says we're a weak ummah. The Israeli lobby in America sees the Muslims as powerful, so they need to buy TikTok to silence their voice. It's the Muslim who keeps asking, does our voice even matter? Do we even have power? The ummah is miserable. And I think that's the part in that, the thing that I learned the most on this journey over the past 3 years, and even beforehand, is we have a magnificent Lord that we subconsciously doubt the power of that magnificent Lord, if that makes sense. The magnificent Lord has said, you are a powerful servant. And we've sort of turned back and been like, Yes, Sadaqallah al-Azim. You know, like kind of like, yeah, you know, and that kind of. So, yeah, I mean, when I was in there as well, and just you mentioned the point about some of the other inmates, and I'll squeeze you just a little bit just so I can have this opportunity to mention some of them. The reality is that some of them had been there 9 months, 10 months, 11 months, and more. And to be honest, you feel the way it grates on you, and it's the time it ticks very slowly. You know, an hour feels like a day, and it's just endless, and there's a monotony to the routine. And in those places, I remember one of the inmates said to me, we had finished praying Salah. There was about 12 other Muslims with me in a hall full of 100 people. So we finished Salah, and then we came out, and this guy said to us, "Excuse me, guys, why'd you guys even bother praying?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "There's no God or law in these walls. There's no God or law like in these walls at all." And you kind of felt, in my case, I mean, we were talking about it earlier before we started. I was lucky in that the Ummah actually spoke, like they raised their voices, they rallied, you know, people were volunteering, getting news in the articles and social media, and reach people I've never even heard of before, just saying, "I want to help Sami, I want to." It was extraordinary. You know, when my wife told me in the beginning, she told me that on the third day when I called her, she said, "Semi, the response is incredible." I thought she's trying to make me feel better. You know, just like, you know, don't worry. Except the only time I believed her was on the fifth day. They were taking us to this other cell. So usually they cuff you, and they used to cuff my legs very tightly until it went blue. And I'd be like, "Excuse me, can you loosen them? Be quiet." You know, very aggressive. On the fifth day, they were taking me to another cell. And when they tied the handcuffs, the guard went, so we're all, you know, hands on the wall, you know, like this, like hands on the wall. And, you know, we're like 15, 20 people about to go in a van to be transported somewhere else for the day. So the guy cuffs everybody. Then he gets to me, he cuffs my legs, and he says, "Excuse me, sir, is that comfortable?" And I went, "What?" And all the inmates went, "What?" He said, "You know what? Let me loosen it. You know what? Let me get bigger cuffs, you know, just to make sure they're okay." And I was like, "What's good?" So anyway, he only did it to me. Then as I'm coming back, this is in America, by the way. We're not talking about Tunis or Algeria or any of these other countries. As we're coming back, the warden comes and he goes, naming the name, he goes, "Sami Hamdi, the famous one." And then the next day, and then afterwards, everybody started treating me better. That's when and this is the point that I'm saying. This was just ordinary people mobilizing, lawyers, you know, taking action, people donate, people talking online. You know, some people went to protest in front of the ICE facilities. It made the impact. You have to remember, the reason I got out was not because I admitted anything. I didn't commit a crime. It was because the Department of Homeland Security, 11 days in, they sent a lawyer to my lawyers, and my lawyers told me this doesn't happen. Like, they've done immigration for 22 years, this doesn't happen. They came to my lawyers to say to them, "Listen, can we just make a deal and get him out and just clear this mess, you know, and let him go, and when the storm passes he can apply for another visa and he can just turn up instead." And they did clear my record with regards in that regard. But that's the power of when you speak out, when you stand firm and you actually raise your voice. So my reflections is, when you said earlier, you know, what was your thinking? My thinking now is the same as it was before, in that truly the power of the Ummah lies in every single Muslim or Muslimah who speaks a voice of truth and a voice of justice. And the power becomes absent when you, as an individual, believe it to be powerless, so you stop talking and you allow the Zionists to win. So Alhamdulillah, I think it was a grand victory. I got to go home, and you know, I'm still shouting online, Alhamdulillah.
No, we hope you keep shouting online forever, man. Everybody loves you, and the rants, especially, I was not bothered at all by them. And the entire recounting, by the way, of the story is word for word what we got online at the Thinking Muslim or any one of these programs that you do. So people know it by heart at this point. However, there was one big disappointment. I feel robbed a bit. I did not get a single rendition of the American accent that you usually do. We need to hear one of them.
You know, subhanallah, you know, it's funny. You know, in the beginning, I thought people might be upset about it.
No, it was
And then,
adorable,
subhanallah,
man.
I had an American call me. He was like to me, "Hey, you do a good accent." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much."
You do a very specific accent, like I think more southern accent, but it's very sweet. And as far as it's concerned, I think everybody's heard the story over and over again of the time you spent in jail. But I think it's every time you do retell it, there's always a new angle in terms of how our deen plays into it, and it's very fascinating. It's not like you found religion in prison, but sort of. I think you revived it for a lot of the brothers there when you organized the Juma, and that was very touching. And the Bengali uncle who convinced you, that was also very fascinating. You know, it was a very fascinating sort of theological perspective by a complete layperson. You know,
No, complete. You
uh,
have to understand. This guy was coming to me every night with a conspiracy theory, and it got to a
I can
point where,
imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
really, and it got to a point where I was just like, like, okay,
Did
brother,
he
but
tell you about the
I
lizards
don't
and
think this is,
did he tell you about the
yeah,
lizards
yeah, like
under the
I
earth?
don't think
Yeah.
this is. And then, subhanallah, I'm walking around. They offered the deal. I wasn't sure if I should take it because I knew, by the way, that in the federal court, if I was patient, there was a good chance I could win. But the
Yes.
lawyers were telling me that, look, listen, it's true, but
Could be
what's the
years.
point of it? Like at the end of the day, you're going home. You're going home.
Yes.
So we can fight it if you want. Some of them will want to fight. So half of the lawyers they wanted to fight it, and half the lawyers were like, we don't really see
No,
a real
in
point.
retrospect, not to give you like a false hope or anything, but I think in
Yeah.
retrospect, you coming out very quickly was a big slap in the Israeli lobby's face. I think
I
it worked out.
agree.
It worked out better if you had fought a long, drawn out battle. The media cycle is so fickle nowadays; it goes on very
Yeah, yeah,
quickly. And I'm not trying to justify you getting out to your family or anything.
yeah,
I'm genuinely saying this. I think it turned
yeah.
out to be a much bigger political victory because
Of course, I would have
where
been
is
buried under
Laura Loomer?
Venezuela and all these other news, and
Yeah, obviously, like, can you imagine? Can you imagine right now that you'd be a footnote in the on the headlines, like beleaguered Muslim
yeah.
Muslim Brotherhood fanatic. I'm getting like
The funny thing is,
internet
everybody they kept
character
online. They keep mentioning the Muslim Brotherhood, but I always
and
tell
the
people
Qatar
sometimes.
lobby. Remember, by the way, apparently there's
Yeah,
trillions of
yeah, and the
dollars.
Qatar lobby, and
Yeah.
the funny thing is that in my lifetime, the worst attacks I ever got, even because my father, fell out with them
Yes,
in
subhanallah. Yes, yeah.
after night. The worst attacks I ever have in my life, and I always tell people, if you go to Muslim Brotherhood and you tell them we think Sami is a part of you, they will be disgusted. They'll tell you we don't want this guy. Like, no. I remember once being in a conference, so some of them are in trouble in some states. So somebody came to me and
Yes.
said to me, Sami, you don't talk about some of the plight of. I said, Wallahi, believe me, they don't want me to talk about them.
Yeah.
Like they don't want. And then the person said to me, and they were like, that's what I don't understand. What is your history with them? I said to them, like they don't like my father, and they just don't like they hate, like I
Yes.
remember one incident once. I can say it because my father mentioned it once. One day they were in the haram, and it was Yusuf Qardawi, Allah yarahmu, may Allah have mercy on his
I
soul.
mean,
And my father asked him in Mecca, said to him, look, like this beef between me and, because there is a saying about Muslim Brotherhood: if they like you, they consider you like from Firdaus, and if they don't like you, you are asfal safilin, you are
saying,
on the depths
yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah,
hellfire.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So my father said to Yusuf Qardawi, is there any way you can just, help to make the peace? Just keep their evil away, like kind of. And Qardawi said, listen, I don't care what the details are. If they are angry with you, I'm angry with you. That's it. Like
Subhanallah.
a cult, like kind. But
Right,
the
yeah.
reason the reason need to create a world where a
Yeah, somebody
Pakistani
said
can
you're not
comment on
Pakistani, and you
Tunisia.
said Alhamdulillah. You're like,
No, but it made me think for a second. It made me think, okay, if you read Ibn Khaldun or you read Ibn Kathir or you read some of these great giants that we read about in the past, he can talk about the politics from Morocco all the way to Jakarta, Indonesia, as if it's normal because the
no,
idea of one
there's a particular problem with you because it's like from an Islamic lens, because it's that internalized sort of the left and the liberal community in Pakistan, and a lot of them are represented in the bureaucratic class, in the academic class, in the ruling committee, in the ruling class. They're very convinced of the the post Suez sort of liberal world order sort of
yeah,
BS. They're convinced of it. They're enamored with it. They're completely married to it. You could
yeah,
have lifelong communists after the collapse of the Soviet Union directly taking funds from the State Department or from USAID or from Australia, and they would see no contradiction there. It
contradiction.
was completely no. The Pakistani academic sphere and the liberal sphere is completely morally bankrupt. They're not consistent in the least bit. They're full of vice. That is primarily social liberation is primarily just vice for them,
Yeah.
and it's particularly worse because I think in the South Asia the brown complex is a special
Elections all produce results. For anybody who says, I am a Muslim and I believe Islam should have a role in politics, these same liberals who kept saying to the world, we need democracy, they said, no, we need coups and dictatorship. We need to support a coup in Egypt. We need to support a coup in Tunisia. Even now in Tunisia, we had this coup in 2021. The biggest supporters of the coup is the leftist so-called democratic bloc, the trade unions. They are the
welcome to the
and they,
party, pal. It's same
and
in
they are the
Pakistan.
ones they were
The
told
liberals.
that they were asked by European diplomats. They said, but what about the democratic trend? They said, listen, these people, this is minority liberals talking. These Tunisians are not ready for democracy because they won't
Yes.
vote for us.
It's the same
Therefore,
language.
we need you to make sure.
They now have a toolkit, by the way. It's called populism. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's
populism. It's a
yeah.
different kind of democracy. So here's the thing with your analysis, and not to like push back on you, man,
Go
after
ahead.
jail and the hard work that you do. I think it's if you
Go
don't
ahead.
dot your I's or cross your T's or whatever, I don't care. You can have a couple of weird opinions or wrong ones, or it's fine. But some of your analysis about the deposition of Imran Khan, that is where some of their criticism is valid. However, this angle of the criticism that you've done is that they're completely justifying it in this liberal framework because, oh well, because populism is bad because Hitler, and if people aren't ready for democracy, you have to sort of you have to believe in certain secular democratic values to even be valid, for it to even count as a democracy, and for you to be able to vote for them, and they tried to square that circle. Some of the more honest ones, the academics, the politicians, the more public figures who are more honest with their principles, criticize it outright. And there is a sizable portion of the left, I would say, not the liberal class, who is with Imran Khan, but it's your particular characterization of him as some sort of pan-Islamist figure and somebody who would have been strong in Palestine. It's just not true. He was. It was the byline that came through Imran Khan was the same as the state at that time. Like for example, with Palestine, he said two-state solution, even though that's contradicting our principal policy from the 1950s. That Qaid-e-Azam that the founder set up. He followed through on that new byline that we've developed post-war on terror. With regards to Kashmir, he had the same byline as the state at that time, which was again a post-Musharraf, post-war on terror doctrine, which was, we have to maintain peace and we can't fight them. And even though they abrogated Article 370 in Kashmir. So that sort of characterization of him, I think, was unfair that you do. However, his support as a popular leader.
But that's a slight twist of the characterization because I haven't said any of these things.
It's very subtle. It's just sort of implied.
Maybe that's what was understood. But what I said about Imran Khan in particular, in my opinion, was three things. I said, one, the part about Palestine and Kashmir came in a talk with regards to why he upset some Gulf states, because he was using the OIC, Pakistan, to constantly mention it at the time when they were normalizing. So they upset him in that regard. And people said this means that he's a hero in Palestine. That's not the point I was making. I was saying the reason he upset so many people was...
You think he upset the Gulf states, our Gulf allies? You think that's what it...
I think he upset the Saudis and the UAE on two things.
Some
he
level.
upset them. The firstly was by constantly bringing Kashmir and Palestine on the OIC thing. Whether he intended any re-election is a different topic. That's not something I'm making an assessment on. Like that's not... It's part of my... But when he brought it to the OIC, there was an incident where Saudi diplomats actually pleaded with him to take it off the OIC agenda. Because the problem was, you have to remember, they were normalizing. Bin Salman was pushing for normalization.
Yes, this is
UAE
true.
was going to Modi, to India. You remember Khalid bin Salman skipped Pakistan to go to India to go and see Modi.
That was a big
unprecedented
shock.
in the life.
Unprecedented, yeah.
Yeah, so their attitude was, listen, like, we don't need this PR right now. We don't want to be talking about these issues. Stop using these issues to talk and bring them up. And there was the issue when he came to Medina and came out, with the... All of this stuff may have been stunts and they may have been gimmicks, but they certainly had an impact in the relationship that he had with those particular Gulf states. And the second thing is, which I think sometimes was a bit of mischaracterization, I actually upset some pro-Imran Khan people when I said it once, is my issue is not with regards to him as a character, an individual.
It's what he represents in terms of popular support, you think?
Not even just that. My issue is that it's a bit tiring in the Muslim world to see differences settled by grabbing and
100%, brother.
It's
100%.
It's sort of like hold an election.
Are we savages?
I'll give you Morocco example.
Yes.
Morocco is not the best example because they normalize, but ignore the normalization for a second. Let me give you the Moroccan example. Moroccan king is facing a popular protest, huge protest during the Arab Spring. So what he decides to do is he says, okay, fine, I will hold the elections and let the people have their government. Government comes in, and the government turns out to be incompetent in tackling the issues. If you remember, before Imran Khan, before that vote of no confidence, he was actually not as popular as he is now.
No. People hated him. It was completely gone.
But you remember that period, right? I actually think that those who went after him, they're the ones who made him popular.
100%.
So what the Moroccan king does is he leaves them alone. Okay, he has some of his factions here and there, but he leaves them alone. The government, the Ikhwan who are running, they start becoming unpopular. Then they have a second term with a lesser majority. They become even more unpopular. The following election, the Ikhwan lose fairly because the Moroccans tell them, listen, you guys failed, forget you guys, and they're out in less than 10 years. Now, Morocco, I despise that government for the way that they normalize ties. Ironically, it's the Ikhwan, the Islamists who signed the normalization.
Yes, they did. Yeah, that's the funny bit. Yeah.
So this is why I agree and I say we don't use those particular labels. But my issue with regards to Pakistan has nothing to do with whether Asim Munir or Imran Khan, one is better than the other.
No.
But my issue has to do with, guys, is this the best way that you can settle the differences? We saw it in Egypt. We're seeing it in Tunisia. We're seeing it in whatever. Come on, let's innovate and have a new way of how you can settle those because
they're called elections, man.
This was my point in that, okay, as a Muslim, Imran Khan gave a legendary speech at the United Nations. Very good. We've heard the speeches before, but this was a good speech. Very good. I agree with you in that it's tough to see what action could have been taken as a result. But Imran Khan certainly tickled the imagination of the Muslim population. He did. What I cannot understand is politically, let's talk now politically away from If the guy is becoming unpopular in government, you could have just held an election, watch PTI lose, let these new parties come in or whatever, and then, sort of handle it in that way.
No, that's what anybody who's politically mature in Pakistan says. No, listen. So here's the thing: if you look at the global scene quite cynically, not to sound conspiratorial, there is the idea of a deep state operating on a certain level, permanent government, civil or military bureaucrats, intelligence communities. These things are all part and parcel of the idea of a republic or a city or this modern nation state. And there's always meddling on some level, and there's always maneuvering and jiggery pogery is done. But the idea that you maintain the optics of civility, that you maintain trust in the public institution of elections, of parliament. In Pakistan, there's like a band-aid sort of style in most of the Muslim world where like they'll remove the band-aid every 5, 6, 7 years, and it just completely shatters people's confidence in the process. And you're completely right. That was one aspect of, and I think you've given more than a fair and balanced take on this. The other aspect is that I'm more fascinated by is that he did tickle the imagination of Muslim communities, not states, communities internationally. That he projected a certain kind of strength, and in his rhetoric there was a certain kind of a brotherhood and based around the idea of
he allowed the Muslim
solidarity.
to dream, and this is the point.
It was exciting for people.
There are two things that people tend to do. Okay, I understand the pragmatic, realpolitik, and my job is a risk consultant. It's what I do on a day-to-day basis. This is the reality of things. This is how the state works, etc., whatnot. But you also need somebody to help you to dream sometimes. Erdogan did it once upon a time, and then the realities of the economy and the realities of everything that came in and whatnot. I remember once upon a time, 2016 or 2015, it was like, Erdogan. Nowadays it's like Erdogan, like kind. But the point is to dream is also a very important aspect. And this is why I think that when it comes to Pakistan, I understand that the debate is very polarized between the two. But what I cannot understand is even when you look at Pakistan today, a country that should be much stronger than it is today finds itself having to fly to Riyadh or to, meet with Abu Dhabi. For example, we talk about this deal that took place, for example, with Haftar in Libya. There is no need for Pakistan. Like Pakistan has no fight with the Libyans. It has no fight with the Sudanese. Pakistan is not a stupid country. I believe you talk about anybody who's dealt with ISI before, they will tell you these are geniuses who work in the ISI. Like you talk with anybody who's dealt with them, they will tell you Pakistan is aware of how the world works. They know that Libya is split into two. They know that Libyans are very polarized. If I asked you as a Muslim, Pakistan, why get involved in this internal beef that is taking place? Why? Okay, Bin Zayed asks, let's say, in my tweet, I said audit. It upset people. Let's change it to asked. UAE has a problem supplying Haftar and supplying his allies in Sudan. Why? Because of the increased media pressure that's taking place. Before, the UAE used to deliver weapons through Uganda. It would go to Uganda. From Uganda, it goes to the border between Chad and Sudan. It lands there in what was ostensibly a field hospital. And this is all on Wall Street Journal and other media. Like it's not private information. It's all public. And then the weapons would go to Hamidi. Because of the sheer brutal genocide, brutal slaughter by UAE's proxy, UAE wants to find other alternatives to deliver weapons. Now, I understand that the Pakistani perspective is we need money, we have struggling economy, times are tough, we have good weapons, we took down Indian planes, everybody's interested in our weapons, in how we did it, let's take advantage, let's sell some of this technology, sell some of these weapons. I understand that, that's perfectly fine. But Pakistan is not a stupid nation. It knew what it was doing when it gives 4 billion to Haftar. And the reason why I say that it knew what it was doing is because it signed the deal of 1.5 billion with the government in Khartoum in Sudan. What it was like saying, okay, I need this money. Let me give the weapons to Haftar. And I know I'm going to upset some people with it, but let me give to Khartoum to show that I'm still some sort of balanced. But without the UAE asking Pakistan, Pakistan doesn't give weapons to Haftar. Think about it for a second. Pakistan, we know its foreign policy. It doesn't drag itself in issues it doesn't need to. Pakistan prefers in the Muslim world to be seen as a brotherly, neutral Muslim nation. We know that. Pakistan does not like to get involved in intra Muslim, it's never done so. Aside from Afghanistan, when it was forced by the Americans and had to navigate and balance between the two, and in the end ended up upsetting both the Americans and the Afghans. I'm not justifying the policy, but unless it really has to, Pakistan never takes a position that's against any Muslim country. So think about a Muslim who's sitting in Libya who says, Allah, Pakistan is coming to give $4 billion to Haftar because UAE asked Pakistan. It's very hurtful, but it also shows you how Pakistan now is shaking. And I think
it's not. I wouldn't describe it as characteristically shaking or a desperation for payouts because okay, here's the thing. Here's the big secret. Pakistan's economy, it doesn't exist on paper because, well, surprise, it's a black economy. About $330 billion is our declared GDP, and the estimations are 4 or 5 times that. So we're either between $1 and $2 trillion dollars in terms of annual GDP, which is a bad metric for measuring an economy. But here's what we have. Here's the figures we have. So it's not a lack of resources within Pakistan. It's on the state level. So that's the resources aspect. They don't need the money. They need the money to run their state operations. They don't actually need the money to run Pakistan. Do you understand the difference? Like between Pakistan has money, the state does not, because they maintain a particular policy and it's a purposeful policy, by the way, because Pakistan has a very deep-rooted sort of elite capture where it's 7 or 8 families and they're working through the military, they're working through the bureaucracy, they're working through the parties. They own banks. They own most of the car assembly plants. They own most of the fertilizers. The big 6, 7 types of industry that you can have, heavy or medium, they're owned by very specific families. So that's the problem with Pakistan, is that the elite in maybe Saudi or UAE, you would see them up front. In Pakistan, you can't see them. They would be known to a Pakistani. The second problem is it's not just a question of money. I think this is how Pakistan balances its act between the UAE, Saudi, and Turkey. That's what Pakistan is doing in its own understanding. Although that is uncharacteristic. But since the war on terror that you mentioned, that wasn't a simple thing. Pakistan, for example, had a policy which was called Pakistan had a slogan which meant Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. That was the idea. What does Pakistan mean? La ilaha illallah. We sort of rescinded that in the war on terror and we came up with Pakistan first. That was the doctrine given to us by Musharraf. So since then, we have made many principal contradictions like the one you mentioned, that Pakistan does not want to look like unfriendly to neighborly Muslim countries. That sort of position that Pakistan takes. Now we are willing to contradict that quite clearly. We showed an eagerness, not a eagerness, I would say, a willingness to join the already defunct ISF. The matter with Haftar, that was quite clear.
But not just, but even the matter with Haftar, there's a difference between Pakistan sort of saying, we're selling the weapons, and they send a deputy foreign minister to go and see Haftar. We're talking about Field Marshal Asim Munir, going to meet with Haftar and to go and shake hands with him. This is a very different ball game. This is arguably the most powerful man in the state going to meet with a warlord, in Libya. It's not do you know what I mean? Even the imbalance of the positions is very bold, which means Asim Munir is not going to Haftar because of anything to do with Libya. It means he's been asked by a power that he feels he should not offend to go and see Haftar and then off. And bear in mind, Pakistan weaponry after that India issue, everybody is talking about it. Everybody's talking about that. And you have to understand with the relationship between UAE and the Israelis, where the Israelis are refusing to allow the UAE to access state-of-the-art technology despite normalization. And where the Saudis are getting frustrated. They went to Trump and said, we want access to the high-tech weapons. And Netanyahu is saying, don't give it to them. So now everybody looked at Pakistan and went, wait a minute, Pakistan has elite technology, elite weaponry, an elite army. Let's take some of that technology and let's try to extract that and use that to support Haftar, to support Hamidi in Sudan. And Pakistan sort of said, well, this is good for our technology. It's this kind of thing in that, as a Muslim, you would have hoped that Pakistan wouldn't be dragged into it. And what I fear now is that Pakistan gets dragged into it, creates an enmity it doesn't need to create, brings more, and then in the end doesn't even win anything in the end either.
I don't want to be mean, but that's an enmity that doesn't bear any fruit in realpolitik terms. It doesn't bear any ill fruit. However, it does bear hopefully potentially financial support from the UAE and Saudi. and it leverages our whole relationship in the Middle East, considering that Israel is clearly the new dominant force. So think about it like this also, Sami, that in Pakistan there is no political capital involved with not intervening in Libya or in Sudan. People don't know where they are on a map. People don't know anything about them. We had Sudanese and Libyan people come in the 70s and 80s to study medicine, but that's about it. I don't think anyone has ever, nor will ever meet a Libyan or a Sudanese person. And the messaging coming out of the opposition is so weak on international issues that at max, at best, people want to talk about Kashmir and Palestine. So do you understand in the calculus of making these decisions, there's no political capital attached to losing out on this particular card. North Africa doesn't exist for us, like in terms of the Pakistani imagination. And I know that's insane. The Horn of Africa doesn't exist in the Pakistani imagination. Insane, I know, but that's how it is.
And you know what's fascinating? Anybody listening to you is that it's fascinating when, as a Muslim, you grow up on the poems of Allama Iqbal, right? About what Pakistan was supposed to be in the Muslim imagination,
sure.
And now we are talking about it like it's, you know what I mean? Like it's
but that's what Pakistan First has done. The psyche within the security state has changed. The security matrix has changed. Pakistan is now very obsessively talking about just South and not even Central Asia, South and that's about it. South Asia. That's the limit of the. If you look at the media landscape, for example, the average Pakistani Muslim outside of Pakistan would be much better informed internationally in terms of international Muslim affairs. But in Pakistan, the Urdu news media barely covers Palestine. Forget anything else. Barely covers Palestine. For example, during the times of the Sharm el-Sheikh, one of the most embarrassing things was that we displayed on TV for the first time an Israeli prime minister. We displayed the whole Knesset proceedings that were going on when Netanyahu was addressing the potential. So things have changed in Pakistan. And I think Imran Khan getting out of office was one of the catalysts as opposed to the sole event that is the reason for it. It's not like Imran Khan was a dam between Zionism and... So we have Pakistani Zionists, for example. And they're all expats. They're either in America or the UAE or in the UK. We have all kinds of this cast of characters who are now being brought into Israel and being patronized. And one of them, for example, went from Pakistan and he got killed when he came back. People shot him. So the public attitude is quite clear and the state posturing is quite clear. Pakistan has the same problem, by the way, that the global polity has. The public is on one side and the state is trying to be on the other, trying to see what they can get out of this. What is the best deal that they can carve out of it? On an individual level, I'm telling you, everybody in Pakistan, state officer or not, is very sympathetic to Palestine. Far and few in between will you find anybody who is cynical about this or, has a very evil sort of position. It's the collective state, it's the phenomenon of the nation state. Like, look at the Taliban in Afghanistan. People had a lot of hope with them in terms of becoming a religious, a sort of a model state for the region. But what have they done about Palestine? Not to blame them or anything, but it's the trappings of the nation state. They're unable to escape it, and they're the flipping Taliban. You know what I mean? They're unable to escape the trappings of the nation state. They have to do the embarrassing parade as well when the army comes out on their defense days. And
that's what I meant earlier when I said about tickling the imagination. I mean, I remember again, these are still in the imagination, but I remember, for example, when they were talking about, they went to see Erdogan and they talked about the route from Islamabad, the train from Islamabad to Istanbul, through Iran, for example, things like that. Mahathir doing some Kuala Lumpur summit in 2019. There was a period in those 2 years or 3 years, I admit a lot of it was rhetoric, but certainly it was a welcome break from the usual monotony of real politics, state politics, where everybody tells you this can't happen because this is just the way things work. I believe there is value, even, for example, like we started this whole discussion with regards to the shift in American public opinion. I ask you honestly, did you ever think that in the space of 2 years, Israeli lobby would have collapsed in this way? It's
I never thought Bowtie Tucker Carlson would be sitting there complaining about Netanyahu. It's nuts. It's nuts.
Okay, so which shows you that
which shows you the American state on the deep level. There is a group within the state, even within the security apparatus, that
Yeah.
is interested in either squeezing Israel or altogether dumping it. That's a very
Even in the
fascinating
UK, by the
indication
way,
to me.
even in the UK army,
Even in the
even
UK,
you will
obviously.
find these generals who'll tell you bluntly, who'll be like, they said never again, and look what they're doing, like in Gaza. Like they will say it, privately.
Subhanallah.
But the reason why I'm saying this is what Gaza showed me, and this is why this is a good segue from everything that we said about Pakistan and about Saudi, about the Ummah, is that we as an Ummah, I just came back from Andalusia. We as an Ummah, I believe we have forgotten to dream. Like we forgot to dream about a better world. Like we don't do it. We've given
No.
up on it. We don't dream that things could be better. But
We
the
make fun
difference
of
is
people who dream, by the way.
we yeah, the
We
only
nip at
thing
their heels, yeah.
yeah, but for
People
example,
are
like
like,
I go to America and I meet the ordinary American. He's convinced that if he works hard, he'll be successful. He's convinced or she's convinced that the future is in their hands. It's a very weird phenomenon. They called it the American exceptionalism, but when I saw it, it resonates very deeply with Sahaba who left Medina and said, "Yeah, why not? I'll go to China. Yeah, why not? I'll go to West Africa. Yeah, why not? I'll go to modern day Pakistan and I'll go to Uzbekistan and I'll go to these other different places." I believe I've been thinking about this recently, especially after Gaza, in that I speak about even myself. We don't dream as an ummah. We don't dream that Pakistan could be better, or that Pakistan could have open borders with the rest of the. It's funny. My dad, I called my father when I was in Sevilla in Spain. He said to me, "Where are you going today?" I told him I'm going to Faro. He said, "Isn't that in Portugal?" I said, "Yeah." So I called him when I got to Faro. He goes, so the border. I said, "There's no border. You just cross. It's European Union.
yes.
You just cross the bridge and no one stops you." And he went, if only the Ummah. You could drive from Tanja all the way to, but you can't. You can't cross the border between Morocco and Algeria. It's closed. You can't, you get stopped for hours between, Tunisia and Libya. Crossing Libya into Egypt is a nightmare. We don't dream about these things because these things are not like things that can't be. European Union did it, and these were countries that fought a world war against each other. Germany invaded France in 2 weeks. These are people who slaughtered each other less than 100 years ago, literally less than 100 years ago. And now you can drive from Paris all the way to Istanbul, like all the way to the Bulgarian, Turkish border before you meet somebody who has to, stamp your passport. Are we saying, and this is the point, you mentioned nation state and you touched a nerve in my heart because I agree with you. Are we unable to imagine, even under the current regimes, an economic incentive program whereby I could drive from Istanbul all the way to Islamabad, the way that you drive from Paris all the way to Sofia, Bulgaria? Is it really beyond our
Dude,
capacity?
no, we have a joke here. It's called on our platform. It's called Stanistan, which is all the Stan countries coming together. It's no. This is historically, for example, there are ethnic groups in Pakistan that have for thousands of years, even before Islam, traveled all the way up to Uzbekistan for the summers and come down for the winters. Animal
Yeah,
hunters. They're called the Gujars, for example. And
yeah,
these people have their DNA all over the place, and they've been traveling for thousands of years along the Silk Route. And in the popular imagination, by the way, the Pakistani elite, just for your information, I don't know if you've run into any of them in London, they're all there. They're all in the UK for the summers, and what they want to do is they hop into Paris or they hop into whatever. And so in their cultural imagination, that is true for Europe, for the EU, because special status or whatever. And this is
yeah.
anybody born after the 1950s and 60s, by the way.
Mm, mm.
The delusion has ended, alhamdulillah, for most of the average public, but the elite tend to drag on even after war on terror. The same imagination can't be for Afghanistan. They say, oh, they're savages over there.
Mm.
We don't like your, like that meme, like we don't like your kind over here. You look exactly the same. You eat the same food. You're wearing practically the same clothes. The borders.
Yeah, I tell you something funny on this. I don't mean to. I tell you something hilarious. So, but my wife, because there was a period where when you talk too much about politics, it really makes you miserable. So one day,
Yes.
my wife said to me, you keep saying let's connect memories of the ummah. Let's do it through a travel company. It doesn't need to be just through politics. Anyway, so we have this travel company. We go and sometimes I take the group. So anyway, we were in Uzbekistan. We landed in Tashkent. I had a group of about 50 people from New York. We're in Tashkent and I can see that they are looking at the city like it is something alien, like it is foreign, right? Even though it is our heritage as Muslims, right? Even though Babur, he left Farghana, which is not too far from Tashkent, to go to India, right? So anyway, I was struggling in the first 2 days to make them feel the connection. And then one day I told them, listen, guys, can you open Google Maps? I said, Google Islamabad and put directions. They put it, they found it's about 21 hours drive. 21 hours drive from Tashkent to Islamabad, which is like driving from Paris to Madrid. Yeah, which is like, from France to Spain. And they all went, oh my God, it's so close. I said, now put to Tehran, 19 hours. Now put to, suddenly their concept of geography, their concept of, these places and how close the ummah is. And it changes completely. It shows you what these borders did. And that's why the irony is this, that the colonizer imposed borders that we have subconsciously internalized. We now see the world like that. But that nasty Zionist, I remember Tom Barak, the ambassador, the US ambassador to Turkey, who is a Zionist, he's pretty pro-Israel. He said...
He's on the list too, by the way.
Yeah, they said
he's
to him...
He's on the naughty list. He's on the Epstein naughty list too.
Yeah, they said to him, what is the greater Israel? Like, how far will Israel expand? And he said, well... these borders were put by Sykes-Picot anyway. Like, why should these guys are just tribes and stuff? And anyway, like, Israel doesn't need to recognize Sykes-Picot. It can go as far as it wants.
Subhanallah.
Now everybody said, how dare he? Do you know what I said? I said, Allahu Akbar. This guy is ummatic in his vision. He refuses to internalize the colonizer's border. He is so bold. He sees the region without its borders. He sees the region as, I can go as far. We don't. We see our Egypt. I have to respect it. This border with, Pakistan, I have to respect it. This is the border. These are not my, these are, this is where it's a very new, and this is the point, and I finish on this point. This is the point I want to make. It affects our capacity to dream. If you think about it, these borders are less than 100 years old. But we speak as, I was in Baku in Azerbaijan. I know these anecdotes are bad form, but they help to, I feel like this human aspect can make people understand it better. I was in Baku, Azerbaijan, for a conference. Me and my wife, we went. They are trying to push halal tourism. Very new, by the way. So anyway, we're in Baku, and there is a friend of mine from Turkey, old guy, like very good, like uncle figure. So I said to him, Subhanallah, Baku, Azerbaijan is really good. So do you and the Turks like have some bond? And he went, what do you mean you and the Turks? 100 years ago, all this was one country. All this was one ummah. And now we are talking as if they are all different countries. Don't ask me questions like this. I like the way in that refusal he was saying, if you're going to ask me a question about the ummah and how we get along with each other, ask me on the ummah's terms, don't ask me on the colonizer's terms. Don't tell me how Azerbaijan and Turkey get along with each other as if they are two countries. I'm not recognizing those borders. Let's talk about it how one ummah is naturally connected despite what people try to put in between. I wonder if we still dream in that regard. And this is the point. There are some people who, when I gave the example of Imran Khan and Erdogan talking about the train, they went, what? It's just a train link. Think about it. We don't dream even of a train line. Like, I'm not talking about dreaming of making a joint nuclear program. Even of just a train from Istanbul to Islamabad is something that's like...
So but how do you see, for example, this desire that, for example, Saudi and Pakistan have had a joint defense agreement, again, which remains to be seen how it works in action. But now we even have Turkey showing interest in trying to work with the Saudis. Very recent development. How do you see these moves? You see them cynically still? You don't think that they're dreaming?
The thing is, there is a saying in Arabic, it's called حَقٌّ أُرِيدَ بِهِ بَاطِل. It's when you do something that is correct, but for the wrong reasons. So if let's take bin Salman out of the picture and all of these leaders out of the picture. It's a brilliant move for Turkey, Saudi, and Pakistan, these three countries in particular, to make a NATO-style defensive pact, because one is a nuclear power, one is a money powerhouse, and the other is innovative in their weapon technology. Like the Turks are producing, military technology on an incredible level. It's a brilliant partnership between the three. The problem is that this defense pact was not signed to achieve a defense pact. Pakistan is not going to send its army to go and fight Iranian proxies in Iraq. No. Nor does it want to. No, it's not even in Pakistan's interest to do so. Pakistan, if UAE and Saudi go to war with each other in Yemen, Pakistan is not going to send planes to go and bomb UAE proxies in Yemen. Nor is it in Pakistan's interest to do so, by the way, even though Saudi considers this its national security, because the missiles that will fire onto the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, they will come from Yemen. Now, Saudi usually expects the US to respond in Yemen. is Pakistan is going to respond in Yemen. So we know it's not a defense pact in terms of Pakistan coming in and using its army to protect Saudi Arabia. We know that. I do think that that defense pact was more about, okay, Pakistani technology, military technology is looking very good. Trump won't give me the best technology. Erdogan, I don't trust him. Pakistan, I have this relationship with them for decades. Saudi-Pakistani relationship is very close. If now they're developing all this technology, we should also have access to it. Let's sign this defense pact so we can have access to that sort of technology and the like. It's why everybody wants to sign with China and these others. Saudi Crown Prince says, if I sign with China directly, Trump will bully me. Because I don't know if you remember, when UAE signed a military technology transfer agreement with China, I think this was maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the US responded by putting UAE on the gray list of money laundering countries. What that means is the US was essentially saying, if you're doing business in the UAE now, we can accuse you of money laundering because we've already put it on the gray list. UAE panicked so much because its whole economy is built on expats and foreign companies coming to set up
on money laundering. Yeah,
in the UAE. They said, what do you mean you put us on a gray list? UAE, by the way, this isn't private information. All this is public. You can go find it online. Just put Google UAE gray list. Anyway, so the UAE, to get its name off the gray list, they canceled their agreements with the Chinese. And the Americans took them off the gray list. So my view of the defense degree, why I said it's a good thing, but for the wrong reasons, is it's not designed to defend each other from Muslim countries. It's, okay, Pakistan, you guys took down those Indian planes and the Indians could not even see the Pakistani planes. Like it was hit from before they could even come in range, like from the radar. Bin Salman, in my opinion, the Saudi Crown Prince went, oh my goodness, wow. I want this technology. Now, people said it was Swedish or Chinese or whatever, but Bin Salman does not have permission from the Americans to go seek elsewhere. It's not like Pakistan, which is able to play everybody. Saudi doesn't have the ability that Pakistan has to play the different powers. Neither does the UAE. It doesn't. Pakistan has some sort of independence, and I think that's because of a uniquely Pakistani attitude, which is why they are renowned, the Pakistanis, in this regard. In any case, I think that Bin Salman sort of went to the Pakistanis and said to them, listen, guys, how did you do it? Let's find a way to do it where we don't necessarily get in trouble with the Americans, because I need those Americans on board. I don't know if Pakistanis will even give him the technology. Because when I saw Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir go to see Trump in the White House, it's very clear they really want Trump to be close to Pakistan. They want to take advantage of opportunity to bring US. And it makes sense because India and Modi on the other side, things are not really good. Keep good ties with the Americans and keep the peace, etc. Fine. I don't know if the Pakistanis get, but my point is this. It's not whether I'm being cynical or not. Every Muslim would celebrate a defense between Muslim countries. My issue is, let's do a proper one. Let's do it for the right reasons. Let's actually, connect the economies together. Let's actually, even when you think, here's another example. Okay, you don't want to dream about a railway, a payment system between the Muslim countries. Right now, if you did a subscription service, you would have to use Stripe. You would have to use companies that have ties with the Zionists or ties with the...
Or Swift banking, just a Swift banking system.
You would not find... Okay, are you telling me that Saudi, Pakistan, and Turkey, and Malaysia, 4 massive countries, and Indonesia, let's put Indonesia aside for a second, fine. You have Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. You're telling me they cannot come up, at least with a payment system that the 3 countries use just between themselves as a starter. They can. The reason they don't...
our leaders are very afraid on an individual level now, because we've all had leaders killed off by the Americans or whoever. Exactly. And now, especially with the recent abduction of the Venezuelan president, it makes you think twice. I'm not saying they could abduct a Pakistani or a Saudi leader, but they could assassinate them, sure.
But we don't... And this is the point. You mentioned Maduro. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said some of the issues is that the state is one way and the people are on the other way. They're not together with each other. When they did the same to Chavez, so remember, the Americans sent in people to take Chavez and the Venezuelans took to the streets in their tens of thousands, demanding that Chavez returns. Americans panicked and they brought Chavez back to Venezuela and he continued to rule as president. And this is at the crux of it. And I admit that if you hear this initially, you think it's idealistic. But if you look at it properly, you'll realize this has always been the only way that you ever secure real independence. You have to find a way to bring your people on board. The reason Erdogan survives is because when the Americans
Yep.
wanted to get rid of him in 2016, ordinary Turks
Yeah.
took to the streets and they said, no way you're going to take him away. The power of the people is significantly stronger than any America or any France or any of these colonial countries. It's the people who kicked out the colonizers in the first place. Our issue is we don't have a leader who believes in the power of the people and seeks to harness that power, because they believe that to share that power with the people means to compromise their own position. If you could find a way to marry the two, the people with the state, America can't do anything to you. In fact, you create a whole different, and that's what I meant about dreaming. Can you dream that the relationship between the people and the state can be different? Ikhwan's problem in Tunisia in the Arab Spring it was a very simple one. Ikhwan, when they came to power in Tunisia, for example, Ghannouchi knew that the people did not vote for him, but that upset him. He didn't welcome it. That upset him. He knew people voted for a banner, and he knew it wasn't him specifically. So he knew that he couldn't rely on the people to defend him personally. He had to abide by a certain set of principles to keep the people on board. He was like, who's stronger, the Americans or the people? And his conclusion was the Americans are stronger. So he lost the people. When the coup happened, he got put in prison. The Americans refused to help him and the people refused to help him. He lost everything in the end. My point is, are you telling me that we have no visionary leaders who know how to bring the people on board, to make them take to the streets, to protect them against potential coups, to protect them against...
Yes.
When did we stop
The answer
dreaming?
is yes. We don't.
The thing is, open. I have Allama Iqbal's book of his poems here only because Allama Iqbal takes you through, where you can dream again. Even from his shakwa elsewhere, when he says, and then he makes you believe that even Muhammad Asad, the former Jew who became a Muslim, and then Muhammad Asad writes in his book that Allama Iqbal may not have had the details that Muhammad Ali Jinnah had, to establish Pakistan. But without Allama Iqbal, he says, there is no Pakistani state, because he kept the dream alive when the Khilafah fell. When the Khilafah fell, Allama Iqbal and others, they kept the dream alive of what a Muslim nation could be. So he kept that going. We don't do that. It's like we gave up on it. But why did we give up on it? And this goes back to the first topic we spoke about when I said to you that the hardest part is convincing the Muslim that da'wah works. The reason that many of us gave up on it is because the right path is the hard path. The right path is the difficult path. And we measure success differently now. Think about it this way. I'm born and raised in London. I swear to you, London is a lonely and miserable capital. I love my city. I love it. But on the street, we don't say good morning to each other. We don't say how are you to each other. If I went out today and I said good morning to my neighbor, he'd look at me like, what's wrong with him? We don't do it. If you take couscous around like for Eid to your neighbor, he'll be like, oh. Like they don't have it. They have good GDP. They make good salaries. They make good money. They're not happy. Their metric of success has made them unhappy. We've adopted that, thinking that metric of success is what makes you great. If you're a millionaire, if you got a good job, if you got good this, whatever. We forgot to measure success based on our ability to struggle for what is right. And that is why the reason we stop dreaming is when people try to do what's right, they pay the price. And our ummah is saying, I don't want to pay that price. Give me an easy way to live my life in comfort and to coast through this dunya. And the reality is Allah doesn't. That's not what the role of a mu'min is supposed to be here. And the reason why I say this is that I look at Pakistan and some people say, why do you talk about Pakistan? It's not about any hatred for anybody. Do you think that I, as a Muslim, don't want Asim Munir to create a successful Pakistani state that can represent Muslims? Do you think that if Asim Munir tomorrow took a bold Muslim stance, do you think I would turn around and be like, no, it's Asim Munir, I hate it? Everybody, like Bin Salman today is fighting with the UAE. All right, very angry. Go on the internet. Even those who hate Bin Salman are saying, go.
Yeah.
Go, Ya Bin Salman, go. We are with you. Just go, Ya Bin Salman. This devil of the Arabs, Mohammed bin Zayed, who normalized and who ruined and is destroying Sudan, destroying Libya. He did
and
it
destroying itself, by the way. The UAE is completely surrendered in front of the Israeli lobby.
I ask you honestly, if Bin Salman tomorrow stood up and said, then this is a new policy that's coming now. No normalization with the Israelis. We're going to end this war in Sudan.
No, we'd go berserk. People would go berserk.
People, listen, I would be the first and be like, Allahu Akbar. go. There is a song, Heather Saudi Folk Folk. The Saudi is
Yeah, yeah.
high, is up, is up. I will sing Heather Saudi Folk Folk out here on the streets. The issue, and this is the point you were saying earlier when we were, I
We
don't know if
got
we were
we got
doing
a
it
little
on.
bit of that in May. Pakistan got a little bit of that in May when it turned out that we could actually beat a larger Western-backed force in the case of India. Pakistan got a bit
When
of that.
Pakistan,
People went
when
berserk.
those, you
Yeah,
saw,
Pakistan's
no
not
one
afraid.
said,
Yeah,
oh, no one said, oh, but it's Asim Munir. No one
no,
said,
sir.
oh, but it's Bajwa. No
Not even
one.
PTI guys, by the way. Not even PTI
Not
guys.
even, everybody went, Bismillah, mashallah, la quwwata illa billah. What an ummah, like, people said, if this is the power it has, how can we use it differently? And that's the difference. And this is why, when you were saying earlier about, about criticism that people have, this is not criticism because, it's nice to get the views or likes or the like. Do you think that as a Muslim, the heart does not ache for justice, for righteousness, for power, for a Muslim power to stand up in this ugly world that allows genocide in Gaza, allows genocide in Sudan, allows genocide in Rohingya, gave a Nobel Peace Prize to Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma, and then she comes to power and allows the genocide against the Muslims? Do you think as a Muslim, I don't dream of a Muslim League meeting where you have Asim Munir, bin Salman and Erdogan and all these others sitting together and saying, we have decided we're not going to allow this to happen? This is what the critic wants. They desire for good power to come, and to tell these people, dream a bit. You don't need to do this realpolitik. You don't need to put the guy in prison. Just hold an election. He'll probably lose the election. Well, he would have lost the election before. I don't know what it is now. But as in, it doesn't need to be this way. It can be a different way, because the way that we're going now, that we've insisted on going for the past 30, 40 years, if you were to put your hand on heart, did we achieve anything from it? We didn't achieve. Economies are worse. The situation is worse. Geopolitically, we're worse. We're now conspiring against each other. UAE trying to split Saudi into 5 different states, Sudan being ripped into 2, Libya being ripped into 2, random countries being drawn into it to give weapons. What did we gain from it? We didn't gain anything. And I think the reason is that we stopped dreaming. And this is why I think that when you look at, for example, with regards to Pakistan, if you can do a social reconciliation in Pakistan, no one can touch you. India can't touch you. Pakistan can't touch you. These other people, right now, I'll tell you something funny. I was reading today about Venezuela. So, they gave the Nobel Peace Prize to the opposition lady, to Maduro. But Trump is now saying, I'm not interested in bringing her to Venezuela, and I'm not interested in giving power to her. Today, Trump was asked, why are you keeping Maduro's regime in power while having Maduro on trial? And he said, the other lady is not really popular, doesn't really have popular support, doesn't really know what she's doing. I'm not interested.
He wants to have his cake and eat it too. That's what Trump is doing. They're willing to let the regime continue. Yeah.
Of course, but what did he say about Erdogan? He goes, the guy is strong.
He's so smart. He took over Syria. What a smart guy. People have been trying for thousands of years. This is exactly what we're talking about here as well, is that Pakistan's display of power in May is what got us in the White House twice. Not even
100%. Everybody.
Nothing else.
Now, here's the point. We were mentioning Erdogan. Erdogan, I don't know. He's one of the most traveled presidents in the world because he's always on the road. What's he doing on the road? He's in a wedding here. He's in this city here. He's checking on this city here, checking on this construction here. I asked the construction worker about the construction boom. He goes, the most scary thing about building is Erdogan can turn up at any time to make sure you're on schedule for building it. Okay.
Because he's an economist, right?
No, 100%. But my point is,
never heard the Erdogan meme. I am an economist.
Yeah. But the point that I'm saying is that this is somebody who's clearly aware that he needs the people to be on board in order to remain in power. We don't have many leaders who are like that. Yeah. We have leaders who deploy the state against the people instead. And this is my point, in that the reason Erdogan survives and still enjoys public sympathy, because think about it, Erdogan does a lot of things where you're like, whoa. But why do people still talk about him like he could still be some sort of sultan? Because Erdogan balances between those two relations, whereas other leaders have abandoned this side, the people, and focused only on the state. And they tell the Western states, you need me to keep my people in check. You need me against the Pakistanis. You need me against the Tunisians. You need me against the Egyptians. You need me against the Saudi. This is the crisis. And that's the point, in that if we can teach people how to dream, it's funny, somebody gave me somebody had an idea once. I won't say where because I don't want to get him in trouble. He said to me, Sami, I have an idea. I said, what? He said, I want to do a movie about how people will celebrate Sisi in Egypt if he did the right thing. I want to do a movie where Sisi gives a speech saying, I'm not opening the border in Rafah. I'm sending my tanks in to deliver aid. And I want to show Sisi through this AI how people would call him the next Salah ad-Din. And I want to do a video about if bin Salman. It's very interesting, but what he was saying was, if these leaders can't dream, let me show them what the dream looks like. Maybe it might encourage them to do so. But this is why, and I don't mean to keep going back to this point, it's that, sometimes when you're talking about these different issues, people can sometimes think, what's the takeaway? My takeaway is that in all of these problems, don't forget that Allah exists, that we should dream, that these things are possible, that me driving from Paris to Madrid is the same as driving from Tashkent to Islamabad. What stops a delegation going to Uzbekistan, Tashkent, and saying, let's open a border? I know you have to go through Afghanistan or Tajikistan or one of these places, but it will benefit everybody economically. Like, really, it will. You look at, for example, Erdogan, he makes Turkish Airlines fly to the most random cities just to encourage Muslims to go to those cities. Like, why instead of PIA setting up a flight to Paris or to London, set up a flight, the same way Turkish Airlines do, to these different places where, you can start doing this. There's so many different ideas you could do where you don't need to wait for any regime change or the like, that actually benefits it. Because this is my mantra. This is what I believe personally. I believe that human beings can change. I don't actually, even with bin Salman, it's not that I believe that bin Salman should be toppled. It's that I believe that bin Salman should stop the de-Islamization. Wallahi, if he stopped it tomorrow, I don't think there's any problem anybody has with him. It's not about whether it's a democracy or monarchy or whatever. It's about justice, righteousness,
I knew it.
and to
You
do
were
what
in
is good.
Ikhwani. I knew it. The moment the de-Islamization in Saudi Arabia. Recently, I saw a program with Tucker Carlson and another gentleman who I can't remember who this gentleman was, but the program was this completely retarded conspiracy theory about how James Carroll, I think that's the guy, the mustache guy. He's like also like one of these new characters that they have. Yeah, the guy used to be on Candace Owens' show, mustachioed gentleman. They were talking about how MBS was the target of some grand conspiracy by the Islamists and the Ikhwan types because of the de-Islamization. So I have all the evidence I needed. I know what you are now, and I figured it out. But I mean, end of 2025, we're in 2026. I want you to paint with that with those broad brush strokes that you do. What's happening in Tunisia? I'm kidding. What's happening in Sudan, Yemen, in the Palestine, and of course in Syria? Those are the four main points of concern. The fifth being Kashmir. With Kashmir, we obviously have a lot more, sort of solid reporting in the region. But with regards to Sudan, Somalia, Palestine and Syria, that would be quite helpful if you could weigh in on it. Just a quick sort of recap, nothing too detailed, just like where do we see them going? What are the big troubles on the horizon? How do we see Israeli expansion, both physically in the region as well as sort of, in this sort of hegemonic sort of way by positioning itself in the Horn of Africa and the like?
I think all of these issues depend on what bin Salman does with his relationship with the UAE. I think that what's important to note is that the UAE is the architect of a lot of the policy that Israel is implementing in the region, whether it's in Sudan in its bid to split Sudan into two, whether it's in Libya to split Libya into two. And I think that when you mentioned the Maduro thing earlier, I think the fear now in Syria is that Israel will do to Ahmad al-Shara in Damascus what Trump did to Maduro in Venezuela. And I think yesterday, from the time of this recording, there is news that there were gunshots in Damascus. There's reports that Ahmad al-Shara was injured. They released a video showing he's going onto the streets walking normally, that there was no gunshots being fired. Today, there is a report from some Turkish outlets suggesting that some factions are now fighting between themselves in Syria. It may well be that given what Trump did in Venezuela, Israelis will try to do the same now in Damascus. If they do it in Damascus, the Saudis don't fully trust the regime in Damascus. UAE doesn't fully trust the regime in Damascus. And Turkey, although it supports its allies, it doesn't support them to the point of harming itself. So if it sees that everybody is abandoned in Damascus, it's unlikely that Turkey is going to go in to go and rescue its ally in Damascus itself. So Syria remains very fragile. And it's actually everybody's waiting to see if Ahmad al-Shara can finish a second year in power, because I think this will be more difficult than the first year. And there's even news that the Israeli forces are again trying to go into the South Syria in order to take it itself. The reason why I say all of this depends on the relationship between bin Salman and bin Zayed is one of the things that could stop the Israelis is bin Salman's personal relationship with Donald Trump. And the point is that bin Salman has relied on the UAE to market himself in Western capitals, because after Khashoggi and with all the falling out that happened as a result, and as a result of his clash with Turkey and clash with Qatar and clash with all of these different countries, bin Salman was unable to visit these Western capitals to market himself. He relied on the UAE to do so. And the UAE would market him, and Saudi Arabia would also seek out the Israelis, open their airspace to the Israelis. They would allow Israelis to visit the kingdom, Saudi Arabia. They would allow Israeli teams to participate in sports tournaments on the kingdom. They would invest with Jared Kushner. They'd give him billions of dollars. And Jared Kushner himself would say on Sky News that the Saudis told me that I should invest it in Israel. It was sort of like bin Salman saying, I'll normalize, without openly announcing normalization of ties, because the Muslim world won't allow me to do it. Now that bin Salman is reconciled with Qatar, he's reconciled with Erdogan in Turkey. His relation with Pakistan is much better now that Imran Khan is out of power. Given that Iran is no longer a threat because Iran lost Syria, its proxies are no longer operating effectively in Syria. In Yemen, the Houthis have been bombed by the Americans. They're not operating strongly in Yemen either. Bin Salman doesn't see that threat. So the question is that if bin Salman can separate from the UAE, bin Salman's interest in Sudan will be opposite from UAE. So where UAE wants to split, bin Salman will try to preserve it. Where Libya, they want to split it, bin Salman might actually find a way to unite Libya in two. Where the UAE was, pushing Saudi Arabia to invest billions of dollars in Israel and these other places, it may well be that bin Salman starts to leverage these relationships and spend the billions elsewhere. This is why the year of 2026 is the year of bin Salman. What does bin Salman choose to do now that he's beginning to realize that the UAE is trying to carve him to pieces and create a proxy state in Saudi Arabia itself? The reason why I'm not certain what bin Salman will do is because bin Salman's threat, in his perspective, is not just UAE, it's also Islam. Bin Salman's push in Saudi Arabia to sort of remove Islam from the Saudi identity of the state, his supporters famously said that bin Salman is trying to create a Saudi Arabia where Muslim issues don't affect the Saudi, where the Saudi is no longer moved by Palestine or moved by Pakistan or moved by these areas. Bin Salman's concern will be, okay, I don't like the UAE, but if I allow Erdogan into my orbit and he wins those sympathies again as a Muslim leader, then his influence over my people might be greater than my own influence. And he will say to himself, bin Salman, this is what I think, that Imran Khan came to power for only 2 and 3 years, and the Muslim world suddenly started saying, oh, Imran Khan, Erdogan and Mahathir, they are a trio that, could shift the whole Muslim world. Bin Salman will say, I don't like the UAE, but I don't want my people celebrating Erdogan either, because I'm not going to be building, a Jamleja or a big masjid. And that's not what I believe in. I don't want to build like these mosques. I want these mosques to be quiet. I want to lower the adhan. I don't want to bring the adhan higher. So bin Salman, if he chooses that middle ground between the UAE and between Turkey, we remain in the same place, whereby he will remain slow to move. He'll remain paralyzed. He won't use the Saudi power to its maximum capacity, which will allow the UAE to survive another day to continue what it's doing. Think about it this way. The UAE is so sure that bin Salman, even if he divorces UAE, is so sure that the Saudi Arabia won't go to Turkey or Qatar or to these other places, that even when bin Salman bombed their ships in Yemen, the UAE still got its proxy allies to announce the beginning of a separation of a southern state like in Yemen. The UAE was saying to bin Salman, Tuz feek, like you think that you can take me on. I'll show you just how weak you actually are and just how illiterate politically you actually are. Bin Zayed believes he can take on bin Salman, not because bin Salman doesn't have power, but because bin Zayed believes that bin Salman's real power lies in embracing a Muslim identity that bin Salman has been fighting against inside Saudi Arabia. He believes that bin Salman's power can only come from being the custodian of the two holy sites, a title that bin Salman wants to remove move to create just a Saudi state where Mecca and Medina are like the Vatican. You come like a tourist, you do your Umrah and you go home, as opposed to having any real power in that regard. And that's why Erdogan is waiting to see what bin Salman will do. Qatar is waiting to see what bin Salman will do. Asim Munir, the reason he gave weapons to Haftar and to Khartoum is because he's watching and saying, wait a minute, I know there's a problem here, but I don't want to get burnt in this problem between the two of them. It's if no one's sure what bin Salman is going to do, because objectively, the correct thing for bin Salman to do is to discipline the UAE. But Asim Munir, Shehbaz Sharif, Imran Khan, Erdogan, Amir Tamim, no one knows what bin Salman is going to do, because bin Salman is not known for taking the correct political choice. He's known for taking the choice that he feels like doing at any particular time, which is why, interestingly, some of the companies that I advise, one day I was asked to describe the economic situation in Saudi Arabia by a big company in Europe. So one day we're having dinner and I said to them, you guys are interested in Saudi Arabia, but why the hesitation? Economically, he's opening up the country. They said, our issue is not with his economic policies. They all seem quite good. Our issue is that bin Salman has this propensity where he wakes up one day and just decides to smash, this company. He wakes up one day and just changes this law. We don't like that uncertainty. We don't like operating in that. Until we know that there's some certainty in how this guy operates, we're not investing. Bin Zayed, he leaves us alone in the free zones. He doesn't come up with laws based on his own wishes. As far as business, bin Salman doesn't do that. Bin Salman can wake up. He doesn't like this guy, so he smashes him in his whole companies, and we find out that guy is our partner. So my point here is it all depends on bin Salman, what bin Salman chooses to do. Does he go the whole way and choose to become a great crown prince? Or does he fear, what the potency, power of some Muslim identity can bring, and says to himself, yes, UAE is bad, but they're the only people I can rely on to stop my people from rebelling against me in the name of Allah.
That's a really fascinating take on it, that 2026 is the year of MBS sort of picking sides. And you've seen that he does still hold on to some of the religious posturing in his rhetoric because he wants to maintain a balance. But like you're saying, in the balance, the UAE will keep squeezing him on one side and Israel on the other. And if he doesn't double down on one side or another, it's not going to work out well for Saudi Arabia. And, on the one hand, is total victory, in our opinion, where he, takes up the mantle of being this Islamic leader and the custodian of the two mosques. And on the other hand, he doubles down on the UAE and sort of, has to kowtow for the rest of his career as crown prince and as eventually as king, maybe, to the UAE Israeli nexus. Why wasn't that pact as a way out potential? Why do you think? Because the rhetoric wasn't there with Pakistan? What was it? Because obviously it's quite clear that Pakistan is balancing between the UAE and Saudi. That much is clear. In fact, some of the memes that came out in Pakistan were like, divorce is horrible. Think about the children, and it's always the UAE and Saudi walking away, and Pakistan hanging in between them. Even Pakistanis know what's going on in that sense. So I mean, why is the rhetoric and the posturing of the contract not enough, of the defense agreement?
I think that if you remember the Kuala Lumpur summit in 2019,
yeah,
when Imran Khan, Erdogan, and Mahathir all agreed.
Wow, you really like Imran Khan, man.
No. As in,
I'm just pulling your leg, man.
Because you mentioned the issue of the rhetoric, to show you how sensitive the Saudi and UAE are to Islamic rhetoric wherever it comes from. Even if Asim Munir tomorrow was to speak like that, you will see how Saudi will react to it and UAE will react to it. So they agreed to go to the Kuala Lumpur summit in 2019. Now this summit wasn't going to produce anything tangible that you could say, would completely transform the ummah. I mean, you remember it, so do other people, right? Okay, there was talk about setting up a joint television channel to give da'wah. I think that was mentioned.
Television productions, dramas, films,
things like that. There was maybe some talk about a railway, but there were concerns. Iran wasn't invited, so people weren't expecting the announcement of some fund to build a railway, etc. The language of the Ummah meeting in Kuala Lumpur to establish a Muslim leadership as a result of other people abandoning it, and new people talking about bin Salman and bin Zayed, was enough to get Saudi Arabia to pressure Indonesia and Pakistan to not
To back
attend the
out of.
meeting.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. It wasn't that there was anything tangible. This is the point I'm making. They weren't about to launch a joint army or NATO, right? Just the rhetoric, just the symbolism of the Muslim leadership transferring from Saudi Arabia to Ankara, Istanbul, Islamabad, and Kuala Lumpur, for example, was enough to get UAE and Saudi Arabia to leverage their economic might to quash and crush this meeting that took place in Kuala Lumpur. If Asim Munir came out tomorrow and gave a speech like Imran Khan in the United Nations, I promise you, for all of the, working relationship that he has with them, Saudi would ask the Pakistani military to get rid of Asim Munir. Asim Munir, they say he's a Hafiz of Quran. If this was the primary, I didn't say it like to deny it. I'm saying like this is what I've read about him. As in I didn't want to. So I didn't want to say it as if I knew the guy, but I've read his. If that was his primary identity, I promise you, bin Zayed would have got rid of him long ago. Bin Zayed would have asked the Pakistani army. They would have found some general there. Them and the Saudis, they would have said, listen, this Asim Munir guy needs to go. We want a Pakistani leader, not a Muslim leader. We want a Pakistani leader who can keep Pakistan's influence within its borders. We don't want a Pakistani general who comes out and says, Bismillah wa salatu wa sam'a Sayyidina Rasulullah. We in Pakistan are
No,
against.
I think what you're specifically referring to is that Muslim nationalism is fine, but it better not be Islamist in the sense of its internationalism.
But
That's
the thing is, like Imran Khan is not
because
Muslim
the
brother,
army
and
and
is not Muslim brother.
the army in Pakistan uses quite a lot of religious rhetoric, but it's within the framework of Pakistani exceptionalism, within the boundaries of Pakistan.
Exactly. And this is the point. It's if they use that language for global Muslim issues as opposed to Pakistani issues. So as opposed to, like, for example, there is a very funny video going around of a former CIA agent who said that when he was working in Pakistan, ISI is two factions. There is the Sandhurst, Western educated, English speaking, I think you know the video, and there is the long beards, the ones who walk around going Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Rahman, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. He said the first Sandhurst guys, we can work with them. The other guys, don't go near them. They're ready to, fight you like to the end. Anyway, the point that I'm saying here is, if it goes beyond the Pakistani identity, if it starts making somebody in London called Sami Hamdi resonate so deeply that he gets on a plane, goes to Islamabad and wants to be of service, and it makes a guy in Silicon Valley in Bay Area who is Jordanian and the Bengali who says, the way they went to Istanbul, everybody went to Istanbul to set up. They go to Islamabad, they say, I want to be part of this vision. If it is a rhetoric that makes non-Pakistanis resonate with the Pakistani state, that Pakistani leader must go. If it is a Pakistani leader who shakes the hearts of a Malaysian and makes the Malaysian go to Islamabad because he wants to serve Pakistan because of the language the Pakistani leader is using, bin Zayed and bin Salman will get rid of this leader in an instant. It has to be Pakistan first, not Muslim first, not Islam first, and Islam must be secondary to the Pakistani, not the other way around. That was what Erdogan did in the shift. Erdogan, for the first few years, was secular. Then when he became strong, he became Muslim first, Turkish second. Then when the economic crisis happened, he became Turkish first, Muslim second. It was Sen Ben Yok, Turkey var. Me and you know Turkey is everything. He shifted that. When he shifted the Muslim and Turkey, he made it from Muslim Turk to Turkish Muslim. UAE reconciled with him and gave him $50 billion. When he was Muslim Turk, UAE fought him with everything that it had. It fought him in Libya. It fought him through normalization. It fought him through Egypt. And that's the point that I'm making here, in that when you talk about, for example, can it go beyond rhetoric, whether it's defense pact or the like? The reality is this, and let's be brutally honest. There is an article from I think New York Times or New Yorker. I can't remember. I'll find it out and I'll send it to you on WhatsApp. There is where Jake Sullivan is in a discussion with Mohammed bin Zayed. So Jake Sullivan tells Mohammed, this is during the Arab Spring period, and bin Zayed is telling Jake Sullivan, you don't know these people in the Muslim world. You don't know them. If a man was to stand in Mecca today and say, I am the Mahdi, 80% of my own army would go and join him. He's not talking about just the UAE. He's talking about Pakistan. He's talking about Tunis. He's talking about Egypt. He's talking about Indonesia. He's talking about Malaysia. And he's not wrong. If a leader was to stand up anywhere in the Muslim world and say, I am ruling based on Islam, it doesn't matter where you are, in Pakistan or Islamabad, these places, people will gravitate towards that particular leader. That is the worst case scenario for the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. It's not Israel sending in a force in the region. It's not American military bases. It's the worst case scenario for bin Salman and bin Zayed is somebody appearing in Islamabad or in Ankara or in Kuala Lumpur who resonates with the Saudi people, who have an affinity with Islam first before they have an affinity with Saudi Arabia, as has been the case since the Prophet Muhammad came on this earth and passed away. And that's the reason why when I look at Pakistan, this is what breaks my heart about it, is that it's not about what Imran Khan did or said or the like. It is the reason why the Gulf states hated Imran Khan. They did not hate Imran Khan for anything that he did. They hated Imran Khan because he tickled the Muslim imagination. And what breaks my heart about Asim Munir or the Pakistani generals is not anything to do with, whatever you want to say, dictatorship or that. That stuff is not what breaks the people's hearts. It's that the conclusion of the Pakistani army was to go back to not dreaming. That if somebody is going to dream, even if he does nothing, if that dream means that it upsets the Gulf states, Saudi, UAE, etc., we're going to bring back a state that doesn't dream. And the reason why it hurts more when it comes to Pakistan is Pakistan itself is the production of a dream. Pakistan is the ummah after the fall of the caliphate, the ummah saying we need a Muslim state. And that's what Pakistan is supposed to do, which is the irony that when people talk about Pakistan like it's a nation state, Pakistan was the dream or not. Why did King Faisal give money to go build a nuclear weapon? Because he didn't see Pakistan as a Pakistani endeavor. He saw it as the culmination of the dreams of the ummah after the caliphate. Everywhere else is colonized, but Pakistan is being formed as a Muslim nation. Allama Iqbal did it. Allama Iqbal invited Muhammad Asad, a former Jew who became Muslim, to come and help to write Pakistan's constitution. Why? Because Pakistan was not meant for Pakistanis. Pakistan is the culmination of Muslims who dream of the glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The whole ummah has a right to Pakistan. And now you have a Pakistani state that insists on telling the ummah, no, this is Pakistan for the Pakistanis over here. This is what breaks the heart. This is what breaks the imagination. And that's the point about Imran Khan. It's not about anything Imran Khan was going to do or what he did or the like. It's the reasoning behind everything that happened to him. Even if he's guilty of a couple of cases here and there, I'm not getting involved in judicial cases. For me, it's absolutely irrelevant. It's here, Pakistanis. Why is it that when Saudis and UAE told you, how dare you dream, you told them we're sorry for dreaming? Why is it when the world told you, how dare you dream of something bigger, you told them, we're sorry, we won't dream, we're really sorry, we'll go back. And you know what? We'll learn to dream within the Pakistani border, and that's it. We'll learn to create just a narrative for us inside Pakistan. Why? That's not what you were meant to be. That's not what Allama Iqbal dreamed of. That's not even what Muhammad Ali Jinnah wanted. That's not what the Muslims wanted. That's not what King Faisal wanted. That's not what the Ummah wanted. That's not why the Ummah invested so much in Pakistan in the first place. You're supposed to be different. You're not supposed to be like UAE. You're supposed to be a leader, but you choose to be subservient. And when I look around and I say, for what? What do you gain from this choice? Show me what is it that you wanted so badly that you would accept to be subservient. I can't see what's so great that you achieved that you would agree to continue to be subservient. What you got from it makes no sense to me, even politically, in terms of what you gained. What you gained instead was an enclave where you're still being buffeted by the storms. And that's the point, in that the criticism doesn't come from a place of, I want to see you all destroyed. Rather, it's a Muslim begging you to be great, a Muslim begging you to lead, a Muslim begging you to raise the heads of those who have been humiliated, and a Muslim asking you to go back to the reason why you were created in the first place, because just that one call, that one dream can make the whole ummah rally. And I'll finish just on this point, something hilarious actually. I went to Germany. I took my wife to Germany because I'd been away for a while. I took her to Sarajevo from London. So we went Belgium, Germany, Austria, Croatia, and then Bosnia. There is a castle near Munich. It's called Neuschwanstein. If anybody's watched the Disney film, in the beginning, that castle in their logo, that's Neuschwanstein Castle. Walt Disney visited it in 1952 or 54, saw the castle and said, this is amazing. I'm going to make this my logo. Anyway, I didn't want to go, but my wife decided to go, and I did what every good husband does. I said yes. So we went to the castle, and it's up a hill and it's pretty, and this is where the servants ate. This is where they played games. This is the garden. This is the flowers. Wow. Then we get to the throne room of, we get to the throne room of the king who built it. Now, this king was like 18 years of age. He was defeated by Bismarck and relegated to a puppet king. And then they got rid of him a few years, like 20 years later. They called him mad and they removed him from power. So, in the period when he's king, he wants to build a palace to show that he's great. So, in the throne room, he does a picture on the top of the angels and Jesus Christ. And he's got a picture of Mary. Then the guide is talking, and I can see this massive picture on the left wall. It's a huge picture. It's like a battlefield. And I'm looking at this picture, and everybody being killed on the battlefield, the bodies on the floor, they look like you, and they look like Pakistanis, they look like me. And so I look, and then I see that it's crusaders killing the Muslims, and the flag on the floor is the Muslim flag. This guy never fought a Muslim in his life, probably never met a Muslim, never went to Muslim lands. His defeats in battle were against his own people by Bismarck. He was humiliated by his own people. But when he builds a palace
Like, oh, Islamabad, Karachi, Lahore, Allama Iqbal, Qaid Azam. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
but good on you, man. Thank you for that. And it's very sweet and kind of you. It's about, I know this is like an ad, it's very fun to be cynical in realpolitik and being a Twitter analyst and being autistic about what tank and what kind of plane or whatever. But the idea of dreaming, I think that's something that's lost on most people, and that is what moves nations and moves civilizations to build anything of any worth. And if we were to accept this sort of Machiavellian, that there's nothing metaphysical to any of this, that it's all just flesh and blood and sinew and tissue, and and we're all gonna die or whatever. If we accept that, then we should just accept Israel and we should accept Western hegemony. What about the people who fought in Afghanistan and Chechnya and Bosnia and Iraq and so on, and Syria and so on and so forth? We could dissect, further. I could take, a couple more hours if you have the time. Yeah, I'm kidding. About the individual situations in the Sudan or in Somalia or in Yemen, but the problem seems to be universal.
Episode 2, inshallah. Episode 2, inshallah.
Episode 2, why not, inshallah? Episode 2 from jail, right outside Adiala jail. We're gonna
or Hunza Valley. My dream is to go Hunza Valley. Like, that's really
inshallah
on the top of my list.
You can see all the north of Pakistan. It's very fascinating. You can see Kashmir, you can see Hunza Valley, you can see Swat, you can see Gilgit-Baltistan in general. It's very attractive. But next podcast we'll have Imran Khan on the Zoom call. All right, brother Sami, thank you so much for your time.
Take care, Habib. Allah bless you.
And I hope this doesn't rub the Pakistani state the wrong way.
Inshallah. I only wish good for them. Yalla, salam alaikum.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam.